What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder, as always, before we start, make sure to like, subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, share, all that good stuff. We want the engagement.
Subscribe to the Miami Herald.
Subscribe to the Miami Herald as well. I was going to get to that. Subscribe to the Miami Herald as always.
Get the money. Get the money.
Hey, I think this might bring us some money too. But anyway, it's been a couple of weeks since we last checked in. We're about a week removed from the Super Bowl. Getting closer to the start.
We saw that well, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, we both picked the Eagles. And I mean, we were looking good.
We were good for half.
We were looking good at halftime, but Patrick Mahomes does what Patrick Mahomes does, and, the Chiefs won it again. So we were off on that. But we're officially full steam ahead into the offseason. Franchise tag window opened Tuesday. Doesn't look like the Dolphins are going to be franchise tagging anybody. Mike Gesicki looks like he might be on his way out. Not really a lot of big name free agents this year for the Dolphins. However, there was some Dolphins news earlier this week. The Dolphins, after weeks of speculation, confusion, concern, they officially introduced their newest defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. The media got the opportunity to meet with him, speak to him, ask him a few questions. To the person that's going to be leading the Dolphins defense and is going to be tasked with turning around that defense for 2023. Just my quick thoughts on that. I thought it was nice. I thought it was a good introduction to him. Obviously, he spent the year away from the game, so I was very curious as to what was he doing. There was a lot of reports that he was consulting the Eagles and working with the Eagles, and it turns out he was actually, he was about 600 miles north of Miami. He was in Destin, Florida, on the Panhandle. I guess maybe golfing, and he said that he was still watching football, immersing himself in the game. He had a little desk set up. He took it wherever he went when he was traveling. He was watching situational ball and whatnot. So he was still keeping the creative juices flowing. He said he thought of some new coverage schemes and whatnot. And he said that after a year off from the game, after he was fired from the Broncos, spent the preparation into the Super Bowl, assisting the Eagles with offensive kind of preparation and points and whatnot. He said he never thought of retirement, and he settled on this, not settled, but he landed on this opportunity to return to the game in Miami. He named a lot of stuff, a lot of reasons for why he came to Miami, because he was a defensive coordinator in high demand. But he said, hey, I really like the nucleus of players. I really like the staff. Dolphins got a good thing going. And he's a veteran mind. He's like, hey, when you think of the Dolphins, you think of Don Shula, undefeated season. You think of Dan Marino. We got to bring it back to excellence. And he's like, hey, I think the league is better. I think the NFL is better when the Dolphins are relevant in the hunt. And hopefully we can get it back to that, So he said the right things. Obviously, he's kind of the guru of the modern defensive schemes that we've seen across the NFL. If not blitzing and putting a lot of guys in coverage. But I really liked kind of his ethos and the way he kind of talked about that. He's like, hey, I'm a blitz when I want to. I don't want to have to blitz all the time, but if I have to, or if I want to, I'm gonna do it. But it's not about, my philosophy. He's like, I'm not into buzzwords. What I'm about is, doing what's best for the players, creating a defense that doesn't allow the offense to score. Because that's what it's about. If you're on offense, your job is to score. If you're on defense, your job is to not let the offense score. And he's like, hey, we're going to do whatever and everything we need to do to let that happen. So overall, I think he said a lot of the right things. Again, he's been around the NFL for 3 decades. He only spent 1 year away from the game, so he still has familiarity with some of these players. He talked about how there's a couple guys on the Dolphins that he really liked in the draft process, like Javon Holland and Christian Wilkins and Jalen Phillips. And obviously he gets reunited with Bradley Chubb, who he coached back in Denver, and he had a Pro Bowl season under Vic Fangio. So there's a lot of things to be excited about in Miami. But obviously, he's like, hey, it was asked to him. He said, hey, it was asked, how close is this defense to being a Super Bowl caliber? And he's like, can we get a practice in? So obviously we got a couple weeks, a couple months till, the practices start, until real practices start. But I think he said a lot of the right things. I think that this is a perfect balance for the Dolphins, because obviously on the offensive side of the ball, you have a guy in Mike McDaniel who really turned his offense around in 1 year and brought the best out of Tua with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and some of their veteran additions last offseason. I think the expectation is, and obviously we're going to see what happens in free agency and the draft and whatnot, but I think the expectation is definitely that, hey, Mike McDaniel turned around a bottom 10, bottom 15 offense into a top 10 offense in 1 year. You've got a lot more talent on his defense, and you're one of the most respected defensive lines in the NFL. I think the expectation is definitely to hit the ground running, and that this is going to be a top unit in 2023. What are your expectations for this Vic Fangio-led defense?
I mean, realistically, they can be a very good defense. I mean, he's as we discussed a couple weeks ago, this is a guy who seems like he's a defensive coordinator. Maybe he's not a head coach. Maybe he didn't have the best personnel in Denver, but there are guys who are just very good defensive coordinators, great defensive coordinators. As you said, he's, some of his ideas and concepts are being employed throughout the league. And so, all he's got to do is, fit what he does to what the Dolphins have. And it seems like the Dolphins have a lot of, pretty good personnel. It's if they're healthy. And
yeah, that's a big point.
That's a big, first availability. And the and after that, he knows this league. I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to surprise him. I don't think there's going to be anything that is going to catch him off guard. I think he probably knows the Dolphins personnel pretty darn well, and better than most, new defensive coordinators coming in to a situation. So that'll probably cut down the, his learning curve. And I think that, I think this can be a really good defense. And I also think the whole complementary football thing, the offense can make life a lot easier for the defense.
Yeah.
You go out there and you put up 10, 14 points in your first couple drives. And, the other team, doesn't put up any or puts up 3. Coaches, they start to get nervous, play that runs down into the players. They start to get a little, get a little nervous, and it becomes easier to play defense. Even if it's only the first quarter, or second quarter, and unless you got a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or Justin Herbert, and so I think that the offense is at a point where they can really help out the defense, and create and put the defense in good situations that limits, the options for the opposing offense, or gives the opposing offense the concept, the idea that they are limited in what they can do, even if they aren't actually. Expectations, I don't know. Let's like you said, let's get a couple practices. Let's get out of February, for Pete's sake, and before we start talking about expectations. But I think you still have to have Buffalo as the favorite in the division, and the Dolphins are clearly the second best team. I think they're clearly better than New England, and I think they're clearly better than the Jets when healthy. Although the Jets, ever figure out who to put under center, the ghost of Joe Namath or something, they get thrown into the mix. But I think the Dolphins are contenders right there for the division title, and who knows once the playoffs start, because they sure acquitted themselves well this year in a very disadvantaged situation. So, but again, like like Fangio said, hey, let's get a practice in, and let's get out of February before we start talking about expectations.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is just one of many steps that the Dolphins, are hoping to take over the next couple of months to really building a contender in 2023. Obviously, they got their guy to lead the defense. And now, the next step is in free agency and the draft, offseason moves, starting to put that defense together. That can be a winner. I mean, and going back to your point about being a contender, I think it kind of goes the other way. I mean, it goes the other way in terms of complimenting the defense, complimenting the offense. I mean, part of Fangio's, comments on Monday was, he said, hopefully we'll be a team that will keep the points down, make it hard for teams to score a lot of points, and put our offense in position to score points for us. I mean, one of the really glaring spots about the Dolphins defense this past season was that they were 31st in takeaways, I believe. Let me bring it up. They had 14 takeaways. That was second fewest in the NFL. So obviously, if you're, hey, think about how good this offense was this past season. Imagine if, instead of 14 turnovers, you got 20 turnovers, or takeaways, or maybe you got 25. I don't know. Obviously, Fangio's defense is, they're known for confusing quarterbacks, forcing a lot of turnovers and whatnot. So hey, just imagine if you're giving your offense more opportunities to score and they don't have to drive the length of the field. I think that, it's definitely a pairing that, could be really good for both sides of the ball. So there's still ways to go though.
Yeah, but turnovers are a capricious mistress.
That's true, but
there are very, very few teams, very few defenses throughout NFL history that year in, year out, you were gonna see a lot of turnovers out of them.
Yeah.
And and generally these days, I tend to look at, if I look at the top 3-4 teams in turnovers and going into the next year, I immediately say, okay, let's knock off you're good. Let's take you back to the middle of the pack. I'm going to knock off 10, 15 turnovers from you, because that's what's going to happen. That's what seems to happen every year. And the Dolphins 2 years ago.
Yeah, they were leading the NFL, and now
right.
now they had a little bit of regression
now,
to the mean, or way below
right.
the mean.
And that happens to everyone. That happens to everyone. It's a difficult thing to keep up and maintain over 16 games, much less over 2 or 3 years. So yeah, they're going to be. You can't expect them to be, bottom 5 again.
Yeah.
Because that's not. I definitely don't think that's their talent, but I don't think you can expect either a jump back to where they were 2 years ago. Yeah, but you're right. If they just get, if they had 6 more turnovers, if you have 6 more turnovers and they're in the right spots during the season, that could be 2 more wins or 3 more wins.
Yeah.
So, and then your whole playoff setup looks very different. So, that's one thing the Dolphins can probably take comfort in, is like, okay, we know it can't be any worse. It can't be much worse. So
yeah. By all accounts, this past season, the Dolphins defense was average, maybe a little below average, depending on how you view it. Again, they got the talent there. The defense is not complete, but if you get marginal improvement in this next season, I think that this is definitely. And then obviously you got to have the offense sustaining that play and help from Tua and whatnot. But if you have that marginal improvement from the defense, I think this definitely should be an improved team, and a team that could potentially make some noise. But again, it's February. Got a couple months before it really matters, but definitely a lot of excitement in South Florida for the rival with Vic Fangio. All right, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, we got to hit on a couple of things, off-season priorities. We're going to talk a little bit of Tua and more. So stay locked with us. We'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here with David Neal on the Dolphins In Depth podcast, talking all things Dolphins. And before we get out of here on the second half of the pod, I wanted to kind of do a bunch of quick takes on a bunch of stuff over the past couple of weeks, as well as kind of looking ahead. But I want to start with some Tua talk. We got to talk Tua. He kind of broke his silence. We haven't heard from him since that second diagnosed concussion the day after Christmas, essentially sidelined him for the end of the season. However, he was out in Phoenix for Super Bowl week. He was at Radio Row, did the rounds, promoting his partnership with Subway. He got a couple on-field questions about the concussions and whatnot, and he kind of revealed some interesting news about what his off-season regimen will look like. He's speaking with FanDuel's Up and Adams show with Kay Adams a couple weeks back, and he said that he's planning on partaking in judo in the off-season to kind of learn how to fall properly. And obviously, he's taken some kind of innocuous hits to the head, falls where he's hit his head, and he's been sustained concussions. But he said he's gonna be doing judo to kind of make sure he's like falling properly and avoiding those hits that may lead to concussions. He said, quote, "We've got a plan set up, and I'll be doing judo on Fridays just so I can figure out understanding my body and how to fall." He also said, despite the concussions, he had a lot of people in his ear about what he should do. And even with being a new father, how sometimes that might kind of creep into his mind. But he said, "Hey, I don't have, any reservations." He said, I don't think it forces me to be afraid of wanting to come back and play. It definitely makes me want to do things to help myself by hopefully not being in those positions next year. And obviously, doing judo this offseason, he's hoping is kind of prevent him from taking those hits. I thought it was kind of interesting. When we spoke to Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer at the end of season news conference, one of the questions asked was, is there anything you can do about the way he falls? Because again, some of these hits that he's had, or some of these falls that he's taken and hits to the head are kind of innocuous hits and kind of hits that you wouldn't think. They're not like the, blunt force helmet to helmet kind of contact that you think is kind of synonymous with concussions. And McDaniel said, "Hey, yeah, there's some things that we can do. It's kind of like treating a quarterback who doesn't really know how to slide. You take him to like a baseball park or whatever, and you work with shortstop, and you kind of treat him teach him how to slide." So, this is kind of part of that process to hopefully prevent these concussions. Tua himself said, "Hey, I don't think that, I'm prone. I think it's kind of some bad luck with the concussions that I had." And he also kind of let it be know that, hey, the team is being very, very cautious the second time. So although it on paper took him, quote unquote, 1 month to leave the concussion protocol, he let it be known that the team is being very, very cautious, and that's what it appears from previous reporting from the Herald and elsewhere, that the team is just being very, very cautious, taking him through the process way longer than maybe he should have been in. But regardless, what are your thoughts on Tua taking on judo in the fall, or excuse me, in the spring, in the summer?
I'm not sure if he thinks it's going to help him. Okay, um, I don't think I have. I understand the learning how to fall, learning how to kind of roll with force and everything. If people who are more into contact collision sports, who make their living doing that, have talked to him and convinced him that this would help, okay. I don't know, but my initial thing is to doubt, but then again, kind of feel like, what the heck do I know? It seems to me though that when you are the hits that have been sort of look like as the the concussive hits, I'm not sure how much could he have, even if you have a certain, okay, know how your body falls and everything. It seems to me to be a very kind of immediate, so quick and so bang bang, or bang, bump, that you kind of question, wait a minute, can you do anything about that? Is that something you really can do something about? I don't know, but he apparently believes so. He's a smart guy. I'm sure he's, checked this out, looked it up, and researched it. So, let's see. It can't hurt.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth a try. I mean, again, it's worth a try.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. You've got, and, if it helps with other possible injuries, that's fine too, because he doesn't exactly have a great track record of, playing, you know, the concussions were a thing this season. There were other problems previous seasons. So, anything that helps him play 17 games, yeah, fine, go for it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
so
this is I never heard of doing something like this. I mean, I did karate growing up, but it just never really crossed my mind. Like I wondered that as well. Like, what do you do to kind of avoid like the way he falls? So obviously, a big part of judo was kind of understanding leverage and body movements and whatnot. So hey, maybe after a couple months of doing this, maybe it becomes muscle memory. Maybe it helps, like you said, maybe it helps the way he kind of turns or moves while he's falling to the ground. And again, if it does help, I mean, I don't even know if we'll be able to know if it does, but if he doesn't sustain any more concussions, then we can say, hey, maybe the judo worked. But obviously, you got to try something to, protect yourself and make sure that, he's being protected. So we'll see how that fares. It'll be interesting to talk to him next time we do and see how that's going. All right, moving on. As I said before, we got off season coming. We're gonna have a flurry of activity soon. We got the NFL scouting combine next week in Indianapolis, your stomping grounds. There you go. I remember it. I'm a good co-host. I remember.
Indeed.
Yes, sir. I'll be there next week to cover the biggest names in the draft. The week after that or so, we got to start. 2 weeks after that, we got to start free agency. The Dolphins gonna have to move some money around to make sure they can make some moves, bring in some talented players. We'll see how they do that. But real quick, off-season priorities: one on offense, one on defense. I thought about this a lot. There's one position on each side of the ball I think the Dolphins should target and bring in a high-end caliber player. I'll say on offense, got to bring in a high-end starting caliber right tackle, whoever that is, bring him in. We saw some of the hits Tua took. That offensive line, Teron Armstead was good, Connor Williams was good, Rob Hunt was good, but yeah, right tackle was still shaky. Austin Jackson missing a lot of games. Tua is your big investment. You got to protect him by any means necessary. I don't think the Dolphins. I know Chris Greer said he's gonna, some of the young guys, Eichenberg, Austin Jackson, are still in their plans, but I don't think you can wait for guys to develop right now. I mean, you've made a bunch of win now moves in the past year plus, going back to trading for Tyreek Hill, signing Teron Armstead. You can't wait and kind of hope and kind of wish and think that a guy's going to develop. If you got the opportunity to bring in a starting caliber right tackle to really round out that offensive line, I think you got to do it. On the defensive side of the ball, I think it's gonna be a choice that you kind of like being an OG. I'm gonna say they gotta get a legitimate middle linebacker. And I thought about this because I thought about the various positions that they need on defense. That might need a cornerback because of Byron Jones, I don't even know what's going on with Byron Jones, missed the entire season. They might need a safety to pair with Javon Holland, Brandon Jones coming back from the ACL. But then I thought about it, I'm like, hey, there's so much focus in the new age of the NFL and modern football on like pass rusher and cornerback. Like those guys are getting $20 billion a year. That I feel like the middle linebacker position has kind of been devalued in a sense. And I recall watching, the San Francisco 49ers, and they got a pair of great middle linebackers, and Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. And I'm thinking like, I feel like that could really, it's an underrated spot to really, really take your defense to the next level. And you have a guy at middle linebacker who's not only responsible in the run game, defending the run, coming up, making stops, but also, defending tight ends and pass coverage, dropping back in coverage and whatnot. And especially in Vic Fangio's defense, where, you're going to need a guy who can kind of do it all in the middle of the defense. If I had to pick one position for the Dolphins to get a standout guy, I kind of want them to get a middle linebacker, kind of like a real leader of the defense. Like, I don't really know who's the leader of this defense. Like, when you think about those great defenses, like you think having that leader. Obviously, we're going to talk about Zach Thomas in a minute. You remember Zach Thomas anchoring that defense in the middle of those Dolphins defenses. I remember growing up in Baltimore, like Ray Lewis anchored those defense in the middle. And obviously, again, it's a bit of a different game. But I think especially in this defense that the Dolphins are going to have with Fangio, if you can get like a real middle linebacker who can kind of do it all, be a 3-down guy. The Dolphins have some middle linebackers who are about to be free agents, but they don't really have that like every down guy who can do it all. And really make plays. I would love for them to get like a legit middle linebacker, put them in the middle of the defense, and really start to build that defense up. What positions do you think the Dolphins need to prioritize?
I agree with you on offense. The right tackle, because it is Tua's blind side.
Yep.
That has to be that's your insurance policy. You need that badly, especially because, again, we go back to he's got a history of getting hurt. So you got to kind of limit him getting hit. So, that's got to be your guy. As much as everybody, other teams who have a right-handed quarterback or, want a left tackle. On defense, I understand the thinking. I like the interesting thinking though on middle linebacker. I like that thinking.
Yeah.
And it is a value. It's a value move, as they say. You're not gonna. You're going to get more. You may not have to pay.
You're gonna get some bang for your buck. You're gonna get some bang for your buck if you get the right one.
Right. It's a value thing. I am still a passing league. I want a defensive back, or I want a pass rusher. And
the Dolphins got some pass rushers on the roster right now that they think can be good.
Right. So that means defensive back.
Okay.
Because you can't. I just don't think you can have too many of those. And both for the fact that people get injured, and also you just need it more for more better coverage, and also I think there's more potential for big plays out of your defense, out of the back. So yeah, I like your thinking. It's very good, very well thought out.
I'm putting my GM hat on. I'm putting my GM hat on all offseason.
Yeah, I'm gonna still go. Yeah, give me a corner or safety. That just makes me feel a little better back there.
I'm not mad at that at all, especially, Vic Fangio is going to do a lot of stuff with coverages. He's going to have a lot of different looks back there. So you need some guys who can cover and, hold their own on the back end. So I definitely understand that. Obviously, in a perfect world for Dolphins fans, hey, the Dolphins free up a bunch of money and they get a middle linebacker and a cornerback and a safety and maybe another pass rusher. But obviously, it's not monopoly money. It's not franchise mode on Madden. So
exactly. This isn't this ain't Walmart.
Not Walmart. I was gonna say Chris Gray might be balling on a budget in a couple of weeks, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, 2 quick things before we get out of here. All right, we saw the Super Bowl. The Dolphins, their hope is that they're there in about a year's time. Is there anything the Dolphins can take away from the Super Bowl? Because I don't know. It was a very interesting game because we saw a what we thought was a complete team in the Eagles. We saw them look like that complete dominant team through the first half. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback, the best player in the league, he kind of made his magic. However, we did see some nice contributions from special teams from the Chiefs. We saw the defense step up and only hold the Eagles to about 11 points in the second half. Is there anything Dolphins can take away from that? Because I feel like there's a lot of factors that contributed to the Chiefs coming back from that 10-point halftime deficit. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, your quarterback's got to be the guy. It's like when push comes to shove, we saw Mahomes make scramble, nothing downfield. He scrambles, puts them in field position. Like I feel like it's still a quarterback-driven league. You need to have a well-rounded team, but when push comes to shove, you got to have a quarterback that can make things shake.
I think you also have to have, uh, but I think it's Mahomes made Mahomes look great,
On
and
a bad ankle too.
on a bad and because that scramble, that big scramble, if he was right, he might have gone to the end zone with that. He's like he looked like he was like kind of hobbling almost down the field there, like I'm like watching like, is anybody going to catch him and just tackle him? Because he's very clearly not running the way he normally does. But
Yeah.
But I think it's still emphasized. The Chiefs win still emphasized that it is a team game, that you do need everything. They stayed in the game in the first half by the defensive touchdown kept them in the game. That game could have very easily started to get really out of hand. But then that defensive touchdown happens, and suddenly you're going,
yeah, you kind of everything kind of leveled out. Everything kind of leveled out. You're like, okay.
And that's I guarantee you on both sides on both sidelines, there was this thought, well, dang on, they've been pushing everybody around the field. They've been dominating, and it's 14-14.
Yeah.
And do you think you're going to be able to dominate like that for 60 minutes? Not against a very good team. So, and then also obviously the big special teams play, the longest punt return in Super Bowl history. I was
I didn't even know that.
Score.
Yeah.
I was amazed he didn't score because he had all the blockers and like there were like 2 Eagles left. I'm like, how do you not get in the end zone? But they still scored. Okay, fine. But that big play, I mean that big play made one touchdown very easy in the comeback. Okay, they scored 2 touchdowns basically on the same play. They just did it to different sides.
Yeah,
and there wasn't a lot of like they adjusted to what the Eagles were doing.
The Eagles
didn't exactly figure out. Oh, yeah, they're gonna. Okay, they did that. They just did this last time. So what are we gonna do now? We're gonna. No. What are you gonna do? You're gonna watch the same man run over. You watch somebody else. The guy run in free on the other side, just like he did last time on the other side. It just and I think that obviously the Chiefs made some adjustments. I mean, their second half, 3 TDs and a field goal, and that's why I really wasn't. I mean, I wasn't crazy about the call. Everybody was screaming about at the end, but I'm like, well, maybe if you'd stopped them earlier in the half, I might give you a little more of a break. But no, you didn't. They scored 3 touchdowns or in a half. You want to win a Super Bowl? Hey, stop somebody in the first 3 possessions of a half.
Yeah.
When their quarterbacks not necessarily 100%. Don't don't allow what happened. Philly had some sort of control of that game, and they really let it get away. And I think the Chiefs' offense, the rest of the offense, defense, special teams, coaching, it all comes into play to win a Super Bowl. And I think that's your takeaway. But that can be the takeaway any year.
Yeah.
I remember watching John Elway when I always said John Elway had to be a better quarterback to get those Denver teams to the Super Bowl that got waxed, that got blown out, obliterated. Then he had to be on those two teams at the end of his career that won it. Why? Because they look at it. The offense was better, the defense was better, the special teams were better, the coaching was, everything was better. And when you have, it's very rarely do you look and say, okay, it's going to be that one guy. That one guy might, like in Tom Brady in Tampa, he might bring everything together, but it all has to be there. You can't, you don't have, it all has to be there, and there have to be contributions from everybody. Even that Philly won that year, in that shootout with New England, the defense eventually, it was the first team that made a defensive play, won the game. So, you needed that, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the takeaway, but I think that's the takeaway every year.
Yeah, I mean, you speak to that complementary football and collective contributions. I mean, the Chiefs really weren't and haven't been known for being a run. I mean, a run-heavy team or a good running team. They ran for 158 yards. Obviously, a lot of that came from Patrick Mahomes, but they ran the ball outside of Patrick Mahomes
Yeah.
very, very well. They outrushed the Eagles, who were one of the best running teams in the NFL. So, yeah.
And if you're Philly, you got to kind of look at that and go, how'd that happen when we had a 10-point halftime lead?
Yeah, I mean, you think they would have been you would have thought that they would have been the team
Well,
running the ball a lot and kind of playing ball control a little bit, but
maybe maybe they should have tried that a little more in the second half as the momentum turned. Maybe tried to hold on. Maybe tried to run the ball a little more and pound a little more. Just to kind of take some of the steam out of
yeah,
Kansas City because Kansas City got into a rhythm. By that third time, you knew when they got the ball, it was okay. They're going in. They're
yeah,
scoring, and now they're going to go up 8. And now the Eagles are going to have to come down and score and get the 2-point conversion, which they did.
yeah,
But interesting how, like I say, first half there wasn't much going on, and by late in the second half, you had no doubt that the Chiefs were going to score and score as much as they needed to win that game.
yeah, yeah. So overall,
And,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, overall, just a great game, great performances. I mean, on both sides. I mean, Jalen Hurts. I mean, shoot, he was
Yeah.
balling. Set
Yeah.
the Super Bowl record for most rushing yards by a quarterback. Tied Terrell Davis for most rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So it was a great performance and a great game on both sides for sure. So definitely a treat to watch that. Last thing before we get out, a couple days before Super Bowl Sunday. Got some great news in South Florida. Dolphins great Zach Thomas. The wait was over, came to an end. He was officially announced as part of the Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2023. He is set to be enshrined in Canton later this year. As I said, it was a decade on the ballot. A lot of phone calls, and messages letting him know that he wasn't going to be, in the next class. But, obviously, he gets one of he gets the highest individual honor that you can in the game. I know we spoke about it a couple weeks back. I guess when he was one of the finalists, I guess, or semifinalists or so. Just your thoughts. It was, I mean, real quick, it was cool to see not only the outpouring of emotion from him and Dolphins fans, the people who maybe watched him, covered him, but even like people like Patrick Mahomes was commenting, they're Texas Tech alum and others who were so happy that he was finally in there. We talked about how this was a player and a man whose contemporaries for several years were like, why is Zach Thomas not in the Hall of Fame? So for him to finally be in, I mean, hey, however long it takes, once you get that call and that announcement that you're in, it doesn't matter how long you waited. You're in elite class forever. So definitely cool for him. Just your thoughts real quick.
I was overjoyed for Zach. He was such a smart player, such a well-prepared player. He caused immense problems for a lot of great players. And, look, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, obviously the premier quarterbacks of that generation, can't say enough good about Zach Thomas.
That should be the only stamp you need. I mean, when you hear that should let you like, all right.
Yeah.
What other questions do you need?
Peyton Manning, who is about as, that Peyton Manning, a guy who showed up to host Saturday Night Live prepared, super prepared, who goes into every game super prepared. He was like, okay, his flip side was Zach Thomas. He said, oh, Zach used to cause him problems because Zach was just as prepared. And his teammates always spoke well of him as a teammate and as a person.
Yep.
I know, and I was always, I dealt with them as a member of the media. Always great to deal with as a member of the media. And it's just very happy about it. Channing Carter had a great story. He said, Zach would tell him before a play, do this, go fill that hole. And Channing said, yeah. He said, I kind of hesitate before doing it because maybe it wasn't exactly what I was supposed to do. He said, then I'd go there and then I'd make the tackle. He said, but if I had done what Zach told me, like unhesitatingly, without hesitating, it would have been a 2-yard loss, not a no gain.
Yeah.
And he was a guy who was, always supposed to be not very tall, it's not very big, not necessarily that fast, but the epitome of playing fast, playing smart, playing fast, great run defender. I just, very, very, very happy for him. And you say again, a great, very good person. Yeah. I find it very interesting that he's, after his career was over, he kind of said, okay, that's it. He's very, very low key. You don't see him a lot.
Spending time with his family and,
right.
Just kind of, low key.
Yeah. And, just happy for him. So,
no, definitely.
Yeah.
That was definitely a great honor. Congrats to him and his family. And it's going to be fun in Canton, I believe, first week of August or so, when he's officially inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm sure I'll make my way down there. We'll definitely be covering it, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. So again, congrats to Zach Thomas and his family. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page. Subscribe to the Miami Herald. Like, share, comment, spread the good word. As I said before, we got a lot of off-season important dates coming up. The Combine, we're going to have a ton of stories. Mike McDaniel's talking. We're going to have a ton of coverage from Indianapolis. We're going to record a podcast from Indianapolis. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. A couple weeks later, we got the start of free agency. We're going to have a lot of coverage there. We got the draft after that. We're going to have coverage every day, whenever you need it, how you want it. So definitely stay locked to the Miami Herald YouTube page. We're going to have a lot of fun this off season. We'll talk to you next week from Indianapolis, the home of the Scouting Combine. Exactly. We'll check back in next week from the Scouting Combine. But until then, you guys take care. See you.